like to say that Rabbi Kleinberg, I just have stage fright.
You were good this morning. So we don't have much of things that were written during the years of the Shoah that survived. There was probably a lot written, but we don't have that much that we know about. But one of the books that we do know about that was written, it was compiled with letters and pieces of discussions and drashot that were written and said over in the Warsaw Ghetto, is this book called the Eish Kodesh. The Eish Kodesh was a leader of Polish Jewry. Eish Kodesh, that was his pen name, but his real name was Klonimus Kalman Shapira. Hashem Yimkom Damo, was murdered in November 1943, I believe in the Majdanek concentration camp. But in his 3 years while he was a prisoner in the Warsaw Ghetto, he did the best that he could to help the Jews who were there with him. And he became the Rabbi, he became the leader, a person that people would go to get strength. And obviously he himself went through tremendous hardship in his own family, in his own personal life during the war years. And at the end of the war, at the end of the period of the Warsaw Ghetto, when the Jews saw that the end was coming and the Warsaw Ghetto was going to be closed down and all the Jews there were taken to Auschwitz, to other camps, the Eish Kodesh, the students decided to take all of these writings and to hide them. They buried them in a wall, one of the ruins in the Warsaw Ghetto. And these writings were found in the years following, in the years after the Shoah, and they were compiled into this very holy and inspiring book, Eish Kodesh. So this is not a book of regular Divrei Torah that you would, pick up and say, oh, I need a Dvar Torah for my Friday night dinner, so I'm going to open up the Eish Kodesh and come up with a nice Dvar Torah. In this book, he talks about what was going on each passing month as the Jews experienced the horrors of the Warsaw Ghetto, of the war, and he connects what was going on to the Parsha, to the Chagim, to whatever it was that was being experienced in the Jewish calendar. So there is a piece in his book on Parshat Mitzorah, which is this week's Parsha, and I thought in his honor, in the honor of the Kedoshim of the Shoah, or being honored here for this learning, we would study his piece on Parshat Mitzorah. So Parshat Mitzorah is the second Parsha, it's a double Parsha this week, and he starts off with the opening psukim of the Parsha of Tzorat that appears on a person's home. There are 3 types of Tzorat, there are 3 areas that Tzorat affects: a person's body, a person's clothing, and the home. This is, of course, only applicable in Eretz Yisrael. The only homes that will get Tzorat are homes that are in the land of Israel. So when the Torah writes, Ki tavo el Eretz Kenaan, the natati nega Tzorat beveit Eretz achuzatchem. And over there you have this process of what would happen. You would call in a Kohen, he would look at the house. The Kohen was like the spiritual doctor. So his job was basically to look at the affliction. So if it was on a person's body, he would look at the body and he would say, okay, it looks like you have this manifestation, which is really a spiritual illness, but it's showing on your body, and when you see it on your body, that means that you have to go through this tshuva process. If you really have tzarat, you have to go outside the camp and go through this long process to become pure once again. When it comes to a house, if a house has tzarat, you may be familiar with the events. Kohen will come, he'll check out the afflicted location, and what he says is, kinega nireli. It looks to me as if there might be a tzara'at, affliction on your home. And at that point, the house gets basically cordoned off and becomes impure for 7 days to see if the tzarat will go away or not. And at the end of the 7 days, if it's still there, the house is basically knocked down. If it's on a big part of the house, they'll take away that area of the house, the wall, the stones. And that's the basic halacha. Now Rashi has a very interesting comment where he writes that there's actually a silver lining in this story. That when the Jews came into the land of Israel, they were living in homes that had been previously occupied by the local residents, the Amorim, whoever they were, other nations who were no longer there after the land was conquered. And living in these homes, one wouldn't know that these people had hidden treasures inside the walls of their houses. So getting tzarat on your house was not a wonderful thing, because then you had to rebuild, but you got to knock down the bricks, and when you knocked down those bricks, you found in them all these hidden treasures. So what you might have thought was really a bad situation turned out to be a good situation. So here's the Eish Kodesh's question. V'navin na, im kain, why is it, lama hizgir mitchila bayit shivat yamim? If you know that you're going to get a treasure, there's a treasure at the end of this process, why do you have to go through the 7 day making something impure? Why do you have to go through that whole process? If you know that the end result is going to be that you're going to get the treasure, just take the treasure at the beginning. Why do you have to go through the process of the 7 days? Good question. Hakevan shenira neged yada shekan manmon, you knew. Ubifrat shekvishi tabaramban, that these tzarat, it's a supernatural event, it's a supernatural type of affliction that comes in a house. All of a sudden a house has a disease on it. It's not something that we usually think about. A house, has some kind of growth. It's out of nowhere. It's not random. There's obviously some message being sent by Hashem for this. Im kain rak l'tovat Yisrael. There's obviously something good that Hashem wants us to get out of this. For the individual, it's going to be a tshuva process, but for a person's house, it's going to be this opportunity to reveal this hidden treasure that's inside. So he writes, and here you have an insight into what was going on in the Warsaw Ghetto in 1940, just before the summer of 1940. And he writes painful words. He says, first of all, there's things that we're never going to understand about the Torah that Hashem gave to us. That which was hinted to us, we have a general rule as Jews. We try to be optimistic. We try to find the good in everything that happens in our lives, especially when it's difficult. You should know, for anybody who studied the writings of the Eish Kodesh, 3 years later, 1943, he didn't write with such optimism. But at this point, there was still what to be hopeful for. No one really knew exactly what the end of the story was going to be in 1940. Aval k'shara'im ka'et, he says, we're not just dealing now with physical suffering. Physical suffering, the Gemara talks about physical suffering. What's physical suffering? Person's supposed to search their ways. Something's happened to me. I got sick. I have to do tshuva. I have to be a better person. What about things that seem to distance us from Hashem? Usually things that happen to us in our lives are there to force us, to ask us to come closer to Hashem. But if there's something that's happening in my life that seems to be distancing me from Hashem,
you have to be a better Jew.
That's something that I have to call into question. Ein cheder letinokot shel beit rabban. There's no yeshivas for our children to learn in. There's no yeshivas for our young teenagers and adults to learn in. Lo beit hamidrash lehitpalel b'tzibor v'lo mikvah. He says, why would HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us yisurin, suffering such as that? to prevent us from being able to live our full lives as Jews. We're having these doubts in our hearts. Could this really be for the good? To not be able to daven with a minyan, to not have a mikvah, a person can purify themselves, to not have an opportunity to sit in a place with svarim to learn Torah? That's l'tova. How can I find any good in this? And by the way, he doesn't give an answer. These are very rhetorical types of questions that he's raising. Hashem should give us suffering that's going to bring us closer to Him, not suffering that's going to bring us further away, push us further away. These are what the Torah spoke about as the things where Hashem's pushing us away. Chas v'shalom, that's what Hashem is doing. What's the message of the bayit, the house that gets sarat on it? The message of the house that gets sarat on it is you have to wait 7 days. You have to go through a journey where you're not sure what the message is, where you're not sure what is Hashem trying to tell me by bringing this sarat onto my house, by bringing this growth, this new strange mark on my house. I don't understand what it is. Comes along the Kohen, and you know what he says? He doesn't say it's tzarat. What does he say? Ke nega. He says it kind of looks like. You know why he doesn't confirm it? Because we can't be sure why Hashem does things in this world that we don't understand. We can't be sure. We can't be certain. And he's writing in 1940 in the Warsaw Ghetto. Do I know why these things are happening to our people? Why we have to live in such a place and not have the ability to function? The basic functions of what a Jew needs to be able to be a Jew? Do I understand it? No. But I know because the Torah already told us. You go through this process, at the end there's going to be a treasure. So it is l'tova. Do I know how it's going to get there? Do I know where we're going to be and how that journey is going to work? He doesn't have an answer to that question. And that's how he concludes his piece. And like I said, 1940 wasn't the end of the war by any means. He was writing with some sense of hope. That hope slowly started to die down. The last 2 minutes, I just want to share a reflection that Yom HaShoah falls at this time every year, always 1 week before Yom HaTzmaut. Now, it wasn't by coincidence. The fighters who led the uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto, they fought the government in 1948, 1949, 1950 for basically 3 years. They fought in the Knesset that a day should be established to remember the Shoah, and it should be established on Nisan, the 14th of Nisan, the 15th of Nisan, which is when the Warsaw Uprising started. The problem with that is, it's Pesach. So the government said we can't make Yom HaShoah on Pesach. That would defeat the whole message of Pesach, of Geula, redemption. So they wanted to push it later into ER. There was a whole debate back and forth. They decided a compromise as soon, close to after Pesach, that we can make it. They didn't want to do it in ER because of Yom HaTzmaut, to conflict with that message. So they put it 1 week before Yom HaTzmaut. And I think the answer to this connection is a question that I'll leave you with. And the question is, how do we view our relationship with the establishment of Medinat Yisrael? We can look at it really in two ways, and Rav Kook speaks about this. I'm not going to go into his whole piece right now. In Orot, Eretz Yisrael, in his first parak, he talks about how Israel, the Medinah, this is long before there was a Medinah, he was writing about this, can be viewed in two ways. And with this I'll conclude. We can either look at Israel as a means to an end. That there was a Shoah, and thank God now the Jews have a place to go. Thank God now the Jews have a refuge, have a safe place. And no one's going to say that there's anything untrue about that. It's definitely the truth. It's definitely something that we take for granted, that Jews in 1945 who were liberated and didn't have any country to go to couldn't even say Palestine because that wasn't their home. They could say it, but it wasn't so easy to get there. That's one way to think of Israel. It's a means to an end. It gives me a spiritual inspiration. I get there, I go on a nice trip, I have a nice vacation. It's a means to an end. And there's value in that. But if we only view it as a means to an end, we're missing half of the story. If we only view our connection to Eretz Yisrael as just a means to an end, we're missing the fact that Eretz Yisrael, Medinat Yisrael, is supposed to represent a marriage, a connection between two souls, between the Jewish people and its land. That's something that's much deeper than just a place to go, a place of safety. It's something that speaks to an eternal connection that goes beyond a date on the calendar. So we leave Yom HaShoah with a question. Leaving Yom HaShoah, one could look at next week and say, next week is about celebrating the fact that Jews had somewhere to go after the Shoah. Or we could take it one step further and say, next week is about a marriage. Next week is about coming together and realizing that this connection goes far beyond that earlier idea. Wish everybody an inspiring time of the year. It's a lot of different emotions, ups and downs of Jewish history. But if we engage in this time of the year with the right mindset, we can help be part of that building process. And it doesn't end with Yom Ha'atzmaut. It ends with Yom Yerushalayim, it ends with Shavuot, and it ends with the Geula. Meher v'yameinu. Amen.